Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. For analysis today is Nishant's pet. Creepy as hell, but General Nishant wouldn't have it any other way. Even the darkest creatures like Lilisha shiver a little when this pet flaps its wings near them. We have General Nishant's pet as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, and I gotta say, I honestly like this monster's design. Some people may think it's ugly. I've seen mixed feelings about this monster. Overall, I would say I like his design. So like General Nishant himself, this monster is a dark monster, therefore his weakness is light. And let's jump into the stats. His power comes in at a rather unimpressive 3,388. So the thing about this power is that it's not necessarily the weakest, and at the same time it's not necessarily the highest, but to be honest, what you're going to see is that this monster is not an attacker. In fact, very little of his skills actually deal damage, so it doesn't really matter what this monster's power is. But just so you know, it's a rather mediocre power. And his life comes in at 26,239. And this life is also rather unimpressive, especially for dark legendary monsters. There are plenty of life monsters that have a higher life than him, so his life is nothing to gloat about. And lastly, his speed is 3,465. Which actually is pretty darn impressive. In the dark legendary monsters category, this is one of the highest speeds. It's tied with monsters like Mommy, monsters like Lily, monsters like Glitch. It also makes him faster than Will Razorface, but unfortunately not as fast as Krampus. And oddly enough, moving on to his trait, he has the trait Immune to Possession. And I say oddly enough because in the past, every single pet and every single general, they've had the trait Tough, which basically gives them a 35% chance to dodge all negative effects. So it's really arguable whether having Immune to Possession is better, which is a guaranteed 100 immunity to Possession, or whether it's better to have Tough. Now again, in the dark monsters, there are plenty of monsters that get Possession. You look at monsters like Mommy, you look at monsters like Lily. But having Immune to Possession also gives you a huge advantage over magic monsters, when you're facing off against monsters like Galante, monsters like Violet, or really just about any magic monster that has possession skills, which is a lot of them. However, when we're talking about dark monsters, Mommy has an AoE stun, Krampus has AoE freeze, so you can argue that it would have been more beneficial if he actually had Tough. So you can go back and forth between what's better, but overall I do like his trait Immune to Possession, although I still think it is bizarre that he doesn't have Tough. But anyways, moving on to his default and special skills. The first skill, his default skill, is called Fang Strike. Single enemy deals low physical damage, 25 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. And moving on, he has another skill called Hellish Shriek. Single enemy deals low dark damage, which is 30 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. Alright, there's nothing special about the default skills, so we move on over to his special. Hell's Horde deals very heavy dark damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, may daze all targets. So it's an AoE with 60 damage, and it gives nightmares and daze. Now honestly, I would have liked this monster to have a different special effect. For example, the deals very heavy dark damage to all enemies. This isn't really needed because he is not an attacker. The fact that he gives nightmares and daze is nice. I wish he would have maybe given an extra effect, maybe something like blind, or maybe something like Debilitating Shadows. So Hell's Horde, overall, I guess it's nice, but really 60 damage on a monster that you're going to be running speedruns with, that isn't going to do much. But moving on over to skills group 1, we have a skill called Ghastly Slice. Deals moderate special damage to a single enemy. Moderate special damage meaning 35 damage for 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. Again, not an attacker, also really weak, no reason to run this skill. Nishant's pet also has a skill called Mind Piercer. Deals low dark damage to all enemies, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE dealing 20 damage, 31 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. Again, no reason to run this skill. No effects, low damage, high stamina for the damage, not worth it. Last but not least, we have a skill called Dark Impulses. Deals moderate dark damage, 50% chance of giving nightmares to target. Attacks a single enemy for 35 damage, 26 stamina, no cooldown. And like with the other two skills, there's not really much to say except don't run this skill. 50% chance of giving nightmares to target, that doesn't help, especially against dark monsters, which many of them are immune to nightmares. But yeah, just overall low damage, you do not need this skill. And starting things off in skills group 2, we have a skill called Infernal Rabies. Deals moderate special damage, may slow down target, may daze target, requires cooldown. So it attacks a single enemy for 40 damage, it costs 31 stamina, and it has a 1-turn cooldown. Now what I do enjoy about this skill is that it gives you the chance to slow down the target as well as daze the target, and we know how often slow actually misses, so it's nice to have a fallback plan like daze. But overall, I wouldn't say this skill is worth it because the next 5 skills I'm going to talk about, this is where Nishant's pet really shines. So you can completely disregard Infernal Rabies, and let's just focus on the 5 following skills. We have a skill called Flesh Piercer. Deals moderate dark damage, may possess target, requires cooldown. It attacks a single enemy, dealing 40 damage for 28 stamina, and it only has a 2-turn cooldown, and it's just a regular possession skill. Now this skill you may or may not want to run depending on what the purpose of your pet is going to be. If it's going to be for adventure map, for survival dungeon, for player versus player, then I would recommend this skill. If your pet is going to be for team wars, then I wouldn't recommend running Flesh Piercer at all. And one thing I have to remind everyone about is that there are lots of dark monsters that actually have immune to possession. You look at Mommy, you look at Glitch, you look at Will Razorface, those are all monsters that are top tier monsters in the dark element, and they all have immune to possession. So even though Nishant's pet is fast enough to keep up with the rest of them, he also really can't immobilize them or take control of them. And moving things on to Gloomy Doom, all targets become very weak to dark attacks. May give nightmares to all targets, requires cooldown. It attacks multiple enemies, deals no damage, it costs 26 stamina, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. Now, Debilitating Shadows was actually introduced with his General, except General Nishant can only target one monster. The cool thing about the pet is that he can target 3 monsters, and this is essentially the same thing as what Tefra can do with Sticky Lava. So instead of making monsters weak to fire attacks, this skill essentially makes monsters weak to dark attacks. And you can think of it as either making the monster weak to dark attacks, or you can think of it as your attacks are 80% stronger. So that's what Debilitating Shadows does. If a monster is hit with Debilitating Shadows, any dark attack that hits them is going to deal 80% more damage, which you can imagine has some crazy combo combinations. If you pair him with a monster that has a dark element 45 damage AoE, that is going to deal some serious damage. And if that's not enough, the monster will also have nightmares. So that's just a little icing on the cake. Now, as far as Team Wars, I don't think this skill is actually worth it. And the reason I say that is because in Team Wars, you always have 2 legendary monsters, which are different element, and then you have a 3rd rarity. Now, the only time Gloomy Doom would actually come in handy is if for the 3rd monster it was an epic and you had the opportunity to choose a really strong dark epic attacker, or if you could choose legendary, in which case you could choose someone like Barbatos, or you could choose someone like Collectives, you know, a really strong dark attacker. But realistically, in like 60% of the situations, you're going to be forced to pick either a common, uncommon, or a rare. And if that's the case, you really won't have any use for Gloomy Doom. Because if you were to pick Nishant's pet, obviously the other legendary monster wouldn't be dark, and really the only attack that deals damage that he has that is dark is Flesh Piercer, or if we look back at skills group 1. So Gloomy Doom, just to use Flesh Piercer, it's not going to be worth it. So for Team Wars specifically, I do not recommend Gloomy Doom. However, if you're using this monster for survival dungeon, for adventure map, for player versus player, then Gloomy Doom would be a perfect attack to combo with some really strong dark monster, maybe someone like the Ringer. So your options are really endless, so it really depends what build you want to build them for. So a really quick recap, Gloomy Doom for war, you can only run it in certain situations, and Gloomy Doom for anything else, player versus player, adventure map, survival dungeon, it's a really good skill to have. And this finally moves us down to skills group 3. In skills group 3 we have an attack called Nocturnal Tackle. Deals heavy special damage, may daze target, may blind target, requires cooldown. It attacks a single enemy for 50 damage, 31 stamina, 2-turn cooldown. There wasn't that much hype for Nocturnal Tackle, but this is probably my favorite skill. So this skill, as you know, gives daze and gives blind. Together these skills, that's negative 25% accuracy, that's negative 50% accuracy. Together this skill gives negative 75% accuracy. Now that is huge because if you look at single target attacks, they normally have 95% accuracy. The only skills that have 100% accuracy are default skills, or if you look at Barbatos' Master of Pain. But when you look at AoEs, AoEs have a 90% accuracy. So moving back to Nocturnal Tackle, it gives them a minus 25, minus 50 for a total of negative 75% accuracy. Now I think this skill is perfect for both Team Wars and for player versus player / adventure map / dungeons. Now the reason I like this skill so much, and the reason I like it probably more than any other skill, is because I want you guys to keep in mind that this monster is as fast as monsters like Mommy, monsters like Lily, monsters like Glitch. All of those monsters are as fast as Nishant's pet, and those are all monsters that you can definitely see in Team Wars, because they are really powerful. However, looking back at Nishant's pet skills, he really can't immobilize them, he can't possess them because most of them have immune to possession. In fact, those 3 monsters I named, Mommy, Lily, and Glitch, they do have immune to possession, and even the monster that's slower than him, Will, who has an AoE stun, even he's immune to possession. So even if you were to go first with Nishant's pet, you wouldn't be able to possess him, you wouldn't be able to take control of him. So instead, your best line of defense against monsters that are immune to possession would be to use Nocturnal Tackle on them. You decrease their accuracy by 75%, and then the odds of them actually landing an AoE on you is going to be significantly decreased. It's going to be down to 15%, which gives you a huge advantage. So I don't think many people would consider this an immobilizing skill, but I think it can definitely serve a purpose, especially in Team Wars, where really lots of monsters are immune to possession, and that's all Nishant's pet tends to have. So this is a skill I definitely recommend you do run. And then we also have a skill called Soul Piercer. May possess all targets, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE, deals no damage, 26 stamina, 3-turn cooldown, and just like the description said, it possesses all targets. Now again, for Team Wars, if you're going up against dark monsters, chances are one of them isn't going to be immune, you probably will possess the other monster unless it's a magic who's also immune to possession, and then you'll probably be able to possess the rarity, whatever it is. So this can really come in handy if it's like 3 legendaries against 3 legendaries, and really AoE possession, there's no reason not to run it. Now even if you were going up against a dark monster who was immune to possession, you could just start off a game with Nocturnal Tackle against it, and then on your following turn you can do Soul Piercer to try to take control of the attacker. So that's something you can do, and I do recommend you run Soul Piercer, whether your monster is for Team Wars or whether if it's for something else. And that leaves Nishant's pet final skill, Shadow Yell. May give double damage to ally. That's actually wrong. I've been informed it gives double damage to the target who you're using the skill on. So it may possess a target, may give nightmares to the target. So Shadow Yell, it attacks a single enemy, deals no damage, 31 stamina, fortune cooldown. So first of all, before I go into this skill, I just want to review that. Soul Piercer, no damage, Nocturnal Tackle, does 50 damage, Gloomy Doom, no damage, Fliss Piercer, 40 damage, Infernal Rabies, 40 damage. That's why I said that it doesn't really matter what this monster's power is. But anyways, going back to Shadow Yell, we really see that this monster's power comes not in his actual power stat, but it comes in his skills, and his effect. So, this monster possesses a target, and at the same time, it gives them double damage, which is like the ultimate combo. You take control of your enemy's monster, and then you give them a boost so they can destroy their own team. It's absolutely amazing, and again, for Team Wars, even though odds are that you probably won't be able to take control of the enemy deny monster, what you can do is take control of the enemy's attacker and just try to use the enemy's attacker against its own team. So even in Team Wars, you could take the gamble. Say it was something like Common, Fire, Dark, and you know their dark monster is going to do AoE possession. Well, luckily for you, you're immune to possession, but instead of using Nocturnal Tackle on the enemy's deny monster, you can just go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to do Shadow Yell on the enemy's attacker, and hope that when it comes to their turn, the enemy's attacker just wipes out the enemy team. So for that reason, I do recommend Shadow Yell, and it does give nightmares, which is just an extra nice negative effect to give. So now to give you guys my opinion on what skills he should run. So for Team Wars, the best skill set for Nishant's pet is to run Flesh Piercer from Skills Group 2, and to run all of Skills Group 3, Nocturnal Tackle, Soul Piercer, and Shadow Yell. And you may be thinking armor, that's a lot of possession, especially considering that the enemy dark monster is probably going to be immune to possession, but you know that's actually fine because the whole point of Nishant's pet basically be to use the enemy's attacker against them. That's why you have so many possession skills, you're going to possess back to back to back. And again, for Team Wars, I really do not recommend Gloomy Doom. Now for a player versus player build, / survival dungeon build, / adventure map build, I think the best skills to run are actually Gloomy Doom from Skills Group 2, and then all of Skills Group 3. So really the only difference is, you're swapping out Flesh Piercer for Gloomy Doom, and that's because in player versus player is really where Gloomy Doom can shine more, because you get to pick your ideal team. And again, I think Infernal Rabies can just be discounted. Yes, there is a chance to slow and there is a chance to daze, and if it ever came down to like dark against dark, Nishant's pet versus another dark monster, it might be good to have 2 special skills, but honestly it really shouldn't come down to that just because of all these possession skills that you're going to use to take control of the enemy attacker. So as for runes, in Team War, this monster needs 3 speed runes, and that's to keep up with all the other fast dark deny monsters. For player versus player, however, you can honestly mix it up. If you have a deny monster on your team, there's no reason to go off speed on this monster. If anything, I'd give him 3 team speed, and that's just to amplify your main deny monster's speed, and then you want to end with Nishant's pet to use his AoE possession, or to do Shadow Yell. You know, the options are really endless. If you wanted to make him tanky, I guess you could give him a life rune and 2 team speed, but really I think team speed would work best unless you're using him as your main deny monster to start off every game with Soul Piercer, in which case you give him all speed. And the purpose of this monster in teams would be to use him either as a main deny monster or to use him as a secondary deny monster. And that is actually going to conclude my analysis on the newest pet, which I honestly do believe is the best pet to date. So hopefully the future pets will be just as good or even better than Nishant's pet. I really hope you guys enjoyed this monster analysis. Let me know who you guys want me to analyze next week. Please make sure to share your thoughts, what you think about this monster. Do you think he's good? Do you think he's Team Wars worthy? Do you think he has the potential to be one of the top dark monsters? Let me know all your guys' thoughts, anything you have to share about this monster. And with that being said, guys, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.